I never thought I'd be telling this story. 3 years ago, I was Sarah Mitchell, successful marketing director in downtown Chicago, living what everyone called the perfect life. I had the corner office, the designer wardrobe, the luxury apartment overlooking Lake Michigan. But I was dying inside. It started with a feeling I couldn't shake, this emptiness that no amount of success could fill. I'd achieved everything I thought I wanted, yet I woke up every morning feeling like I was sleepwalking through life. My friends would say I had everything, but I felt like I had nothing. The turning point came on a random Tuesday in October 2019. I was rushing to catch the train when I saw her, a woman in a hijab sitting on a bench, feeding pigeons with such peace and contentment on her face. Something about her stillness in the chaos of the city stopped me cold. I found myself walking toward her instead of to my train. "Excuse me," I said, feeling foolish. "You just look so peaceful. How do you do that?" She smiled. This warm, genuine smile that made me forget about my morning meetings and deadlines. "I found my purpose," she said simply. "Would you like to know about it?" That woman was Aisha, and she became my first Muslim friend. Over coffee, she told me about Islam, not the distorted version I'd heard in the media, but the real Islam, about submission to Allah, about finding peace in prayer, about the dignity of every human being. I was skeptical, but something in her eyes made me want to learn more. I started researching on my own, reading about Islam online, watching videos. The more I learned, the more pieces of a puzzle I didn't know existed started falling into place. Islam answered questions I'd been asking my whole life without realizing it. Why are we here? What happens after death? How should we treat each other? The more I learned, the more I felt this pull toward the truth. But I was terrified. I came from a conservative Christian family in Ohio. My parents had never even met a Muslim. I knew they'd be devastated. My friends at work would think I'd lost my mind. I'd worked so hard to build this image of the successful, independent woman. How could I suddenly become someone who wore a headscarf? But the truth was undeniable. Every day I felt more drawn to Islam. I started praying in secret, reading the Quran in my apartment at night. The prayers felt like coming home to a place I'd never been but somehow knew intimately. The breaking point came during Ramadan 2020. I was working from home due to COVID, and I decided to fast along with Aisha and her family, who had invited me to join their virtual iftar. That first fast was torture. I was hungry, cranky, and questioning everything. But when sunset came and we broke our fast together over video call, I felt something I'd never experienced before. This overwhelming sense of belonging, of being part of something bigger than myself. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the day I'd met Aisha, about how peaceful she looked feeding those pigeons. I realized I wanted that peace. I wanted that purpose. I wanted that connection to something greater than myself. The next morning, I called Aisha. "I think I want to become Muslim," I said, my voice shaking. "Are you sure?" she asked gently. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. The Shahada ceremony was just me, Aisha, and her husband Ahmed in their living room. I repeated the words after them. "I bear witness that there is no God but Allah, and I bear witness that Muhammad is his messenger." The moment I said those words, I felt this incredible weight lift off my shoulders. For the first time in my life, I felt complete. But the real challenge was just beginning. Telling my family was the hardest thing I've ever done. My mother cried, my father got angry. They couldn't understand how their successful, educated daughter could throw away everything she'd worked for what they saw as an extremist religion. "You're throwing away your career, your future, everything we've taught you," my father said during that painful phone call. But I knew I wasn't throwing anything away. I was finding myself. The hardest part was the stares and comments when I started wearing hijab. People would cross the street when they saw me. A customer at work asked if I was oppressed. Strangers would make comments about going back to where I came from, even though I was born and raised in Ohio. But through it all, I held on to the peace I'd found. Islam had given me something no job, no amount of money, no amount of success ever could. It gave me purpose. It gave me a reason to be better, to treat others with kindness, to remember that this life is temporary, and what matters is how we serve Allah and each other. 2 years later, I'm still learning, still growing. I left my corporate job and now work for a nonprofit that helps Muslim families integrate into American society. I met my husband, Omar, at the mosque, and we got married last spring. My parents still struggle with my choices, but they're learning to accept them. The Sarah Mitchell who was dying inside that luxury apartment 3 years ago is gone. In her place is Sarah Ahmed, a woman who knows exactly who she is and what she believes. I found my peace. I found my purpose. I found my way home to Allah. And every single day, I'm grateful for that woman feeding pigeons on a bench in downtown Chicago, because she showed me that true peace isn't something you achieve. It's something you surrender to. And now, every single day at exactly 5:17 p.m., the exact time I first saw Aisha feeding those pigeons, I stop whatever I'm doing and remember that moment. 1 minute. Just 60 seconds where I pause, close my eyes, and whisper the same prayer that changed everything. Alhamdulillahi alladhi hadana lihada wa ma kunna linahtadiya lawla an hadana Allah. Praise be to Allah, the one who guided us to this. We would never have been guided unless Allah had guided us. That 1 minute reminds me that sometimes the biggest transformations happen in the smallest moments. A chance encounter on a park bench, a simple question asked to a stranger, a heart finally ready to hear the truth. I used to measure my life in dollars and promotions. Now I measure it in prayers and peace. In the smile of a child at the mosque, in the warmth of community during Ramadan, in the certainty that I finally know who I am and whose I am. That woman feeding pigeons? She didn't know it, but she wasn't just feeding birds that day. She was feeding a soul that had been starving for meaning, for purpose, for truth. And now, every evening at 5:17 p.m., I feed my own soul with gratitude for that moment, and for the courage to follow it wherever it led me home.